How you doing, YouTube? All my friends and family, I'm Quentin Avery. Do not forget to like the video or subscribe or tell a friend or so. So we are in part 4 on our series and ask questions on what is the law. Now, my mother was asking me, why am I repeating the same material? Because it's reinforced learning. Remember, this is a small letter word, 3 letters, law. But every time a person is talking about law, they're not telling you which part of the law they're talking about. Okay? It's very, very important to break law down and take law very, very slowly and take it very seriously. So, like we said in the other videos, that law is going to be, by definition, a system of rules, but it is a bunch of do's and don'ts that most people are not interested in studying. Why? Because it's directly connected to sin. We want to normalize sin. We want to hide from sin. We want to avoid it by not going through the law, which brings the consciousness of sin. So without bringing the consciousness of sin, we avoid the law, and therefore we say, because of the law, whatever it is that they say. So now, if you've ever been to the house of worship, coming from the book of Romans 6 and 14, you have heard them say, are we under the law? Is what religious leaders and teachers ask. They will reply, no, we are not under the law. What I said in the last video, that it would be less confusing if they would say we are not under the law that requires works. See how that works? Because Paul is going to describe a completely different law. He said there's one that requires faith. So we need to know what these different laws are and what the requirements, because there is the schoolmaster, which we're going to have some reinforced learning. Now, the scripture says, for sin shall no longer be your master, because we are not under law, we're under grace. But we need to understand that every time you see the word law, you should ask, which law are they talking about? The reason why is because in the book of Exodus, there's going to be a covenant law, which is the 10 Commandments, tablets of stone. Now, we know the 10 Commandments just as commands or commandments. We've never really identified them as law, but the Bible identifies them as covenant law. Now, this covenant law was inside of a wooden chest called an ark. Now, of course, it had gold around it, and it had a lot of different things to go along with it. You have to read it for yourself. It's in the book of Exodus, around the 25th chapter. Read it for yourself. Now, within it, they placed the tablets in the stone that Moses went up to the mountain to come down and get. They placed that inside of the ark, and then Moses wrote a book, and he said, this law, a different law. And he took this book and he placed it on the side of the ark. Inside of this book, you have your civil laws, you have your ceremonial laws, you have your dietary laws, and the tablets are called moral laws. Paul will refer to this as the schoolmaster to bring you to Christ. The schoolmaster to bring you to Christ. Now, the law that requires works, what Paul would write, he says no one could be declared righteous by the works of the law. Rather, it would bring consciousness of sin. He said, I would never have known what sin really was if it was not for the law. He said, I would not have known what coveting was if the law would not have said, you shall not covet. So, the law that requires faith, you can be justified by faith. The word justified means to be made or declared righteous. That's the goal. The goal is to be declared righteous in the sight of God. So if we cannot be declared righteous in the sight of God, what is the point of all of this? And that's why we're taking this time to go over law. So we have the schoolmaster, the tutor, the teacher who is going to give us conscious of our sin, but is also going to point to Jesus as our teacher, or as our prophet, as our priest, as our king. And so we're going to be able to recognize who he is and recognize what he's going to be fulfilling by studying the law, by studying the tabernacle. They're all tutors to teach you about the Messiah and what he's going to do and how he's going to fulfill these laws and the prophets, so that maybe one day we might become the righteousness of God. All right? So, the law that required works were written on tablets of stone. Excuse me. The law that required works was written with ink. But now the law that requires faith are written on tablets of human hearts. And they're written not with ink, but they're written with the Spirit of the living God. That's the law that requires faith. Okay? So, no one could be declared righteous by the works of the law. Rather, going through it, you gain consciousness of it. So now that through the law, sin can be recognized as utterly sinful. Now, then Jeremiah wrote about a law. So in Jeremiah 31 and 33, always ask yourself, which law is that? Now, Jeremiah wrote about a law. He says that the Creator is going to place these laws in your heart and write them on your minds. Or maybe I said it the wrong way, but just so I can clean it up, let's read it. He says, "This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my laws in their mind and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people." So, the law that requires faith is written on our hearts. The law that requires faith is written with the Spirit of the living God, while the law that requires works is written with ink. The law that requires faith, what I just said, is written with human hearts, the tablets of human hearts, while the law that requires works is written with the tablets of stones. So there's one law that can justify a person, making them or declaring them righteous, while the law that requires works, no one will be declared righteous by the works of the law. So, are we under the law? No, not the law that requires works, but what about the law that requires faith? Okay, let's take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 2 and 3 and verse 6. This says, "You yourself are our letters, written on our hearts, known and read by everyone. You show that you are a letter from Christ, the results of our ministry, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. Not on tablets of stone, but on tablets of human hearts. He has made us," verse 6, "he has made us competent as ministers of the new covenant." This is what the prophet Jeremiah prophesied in the Old Testament about the new covenant. He said, "He has made us competent as ministers of the new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life." Now, the letter had no life-giving power. The Spirit has life-giving power. The law can only show you the x-ray machine of what's wrong, the sinful condition. It shows you that sin is utterly sinful. And then the Spirit can actually give you life. Now, in Romans 6 and 14, it says, "Sin shall no longer be your master." Now, that's what Paul said in Romans 6 and 14. True freedom is not so much the right to do what you want to do, but it is also the power to do what you ought to do. That's true freedom. So, Jesus said himself that it is the Father living in me doing his works through me. Now, if sin is living in you doing its works through you, then sin is your master as opposed to the Father. No one can serve two masters. Well, thank you for watching What is the Law Part 4, and we look forward to Part 5 because we are not done yet. All right, take care.